and welcome to the Newchip Accelerator online demo week for November 2020. My name is Armando Vera Carvajal, and I'm the Accelerator Director here at Newchip. Today, I'm hosting a very special panel discussion with a unique group of amazing entrepreneurs from the Newchip Accelerator to talk about their entrepreneurial journey and, more importantly, why they are entrepreneurs. These are three entrepreneurs who have devoted their lives to building businesses that will innovate and change the world in different ways over the coming years. Now, we all know that entrepreneurship is highly glamorized in the media as some sort of magical period of time that leads to an overnight fairy tale resolution. You know, someone somewhere builds something that goes viral the next day and is then acquired by a tech giant for $100 trillion, or IPOs the following week for $1 gazillion valuation, right? We know that that is very far from reality. It usually takes years, if not decades, for startups to become major overnight successes. And some of them, even when they go down that path, they don't achieve the success that they've been wanting. We also know that the typical journey and experience for an entrepreneur is usually fraught with numerous challenges and opportunities. It is a tough journey, but it is one that is truly, truly, truly rewarding. And at the same time, it is also one of deep meaning for the entrepreneur who is taking those big risks head on. That's why, without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this talk, Why We Are Entrepreneurs. And I'd love to quickly introduce our guests. First joining us is Julie Bula, co-founder and CEO of Swift. Swift is a SaaS software solution providing merchandising tools that coordinate and prioritize digital content creation to get products online faster with greater accuracy. We also have Sassan Motamedi, founder and CEO of etagz, a QR medical ID with a user dashboard medical profile that connects to bracelets and other medical IDs. I'm also delighted to introduce Bruce Quackenbush, CEO of My Cancer to Be, a startup technology company assisting late-stage cancer patients with access to next-generation treatment options. Julie, Marcus, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to have you here. Before we jump into the discussion, I would love it if we could each give a quick sort of overview of our companies. I know that I just gave a very quick one-liner, but to paint the picture of what you're building and how that relates to your journey as an entrepreneur. I love it if we could just give quick intros in that regard. Julie, why don't we go with you first?
Sure. Thank you, Armando. So as you said, I am Julie Bula. I'm co-founder, CFO of Swift. And Swift is SaaS software that helps retailers of all sizes quickly and profitably scale their online businesses. And we do this by automating processes and reducing their reliance on Excel spreadsheets. I have over 20 years of experience in retail finance and operations, including working at the Free People brand and at Anthropology.com, where I was responsible for a variety of teams, including marketing, planning, sample management, and product information. It was actually at Anthropology where I met my two co-founders, Michael Robinson and Rajana Sharma. And the three of us thoroughly enjoyed, I think it's a highlight of all of our careers, working together for almost 10 years where we ran the e-commerce business. And we were fortunate to start very early in e-commerce and really work with our teams to make the business scale. While we were doing that, they experienced a lot of issues with workflow management for product launch that kept our growth suppressed. So we created an on-prem automated solution that quickly had positive benefits and allowed us to grow. We fast forward 15 years, and the three of us were shocked to discover that the current retail industry still experiences the same problems that we did, and they still don't have a solution to solve them. So we brought our solution to the industry in a SaaS version. We created Swift, and Swift is the first automated end-to-end solution for the entire product launch process that helps teams work together smarter to launch their products faster with better content from anywhere. SWEFT uses a centralized product database that easily integrates with a client's systems to produce a 360-degree view of product data with a single point of entry and immediate visibility to all, reducing frustration, redundant entries, and keying errors. The end results are increased sales, increased margin, and increased profits. And with COVID-19 changing the customer shopping behavior to make e-commerce their primary channel, we are extremely excited that we can bring a solution to retailers everywhere that allows them to quickly and profitably scale their online businesses so that they are ready to be successful in supporting this increased customer demand.
That's incredible. Thank you so much, Julie. And lots of amazing perspectives that you're going to bring to this conversation today. Marcus, give us a quick overview of etagz.
My name is Marcus Sassan Motamedi. I'm the founder and creator of etagz, which is this thing I'm wearing, or one version of it. A few years ago, I was having issues with my mom, and I have some background in pharmaceutical medical industry. And when first responders and EMT arrived and kind of started asking me questions about what's going on with my mom, I was kind of helpless and I didn't know what to do. They needed medical information, they need medications, and I could not answer those questions. And luckily the situation turned out okay, but afterwards I decided to go find something for my mom and look for medical devices, medical tags, and after some little bit of research, I realized like there is nothing out there that provides medical information for first responders and medical personnel. And there's this old engraved medical ID, and it's old school technology. And the last time a medical ID was designed was like in the late 70s. And that got me curious about why, this, are the new technologies, at that point we were in 2016, 2017. I was curious how come, with all this development, that technology hasn't affected, this part of the medical industry. And that kind of threw me into a rabbit's hole of starting to create a product instead of looking for something to buy for my mom. So, and then, different thoughts came about, and I basically ended up designing a system where you have a user dashboard and a website, and you provide any medical information you want, emergency contacts, and then there's also GPS locating, APIs, and all of this is in one dashboard where it's your personal profile, and then we ship you a wristband or a necklace or any other form of etagz, and you connect, just like my wristband is, we would ship you one, and you connect that to your personal profile. So whoever scans your wristband or bracelet immediately gets to view that emergency medical information you wanted to provide, and pictures, emergency contacts, a bunch of other good stuff. So as we all know, at least especially after COVID-19, all QR codes are readable with your phone camera or any device camera, and and again, after the pandemic started, things became a lot more quicker with our situation because there was less familiarity with QR codes, and now there's a lot more familiarity. So that has accelerated our kind of understanding of our product greatly. And at the same time, we're hoping to make an impact, at least in this part of the medical industry, and hopefully save a lot of lives. We shall see.
That's incredible. And I think always having that, first of all, that story, right, where somebody from your life, someone important, influences you to do something like that, and then having the vision of making that kind of impact is, I think, fundamental to sticking through with the vision and the plan over the long term to turn it into a success. Pleasure to have you here, Marcus. Bruce.
Thanks, Armando. As you mentioned, My Cancer DB is a technology company. I'm one of the founding executives, and we believe that we are enabling the future of cancer treatment. We were founded to serve cancer patients who are frustrated by the treatment options and choices that they find are currently often available to them. And in building our service to them, we're improving the way patients can identify and access their best treatment options, especially personalized therapies based on genomics. Our core product is an in-the-cloud platform which empowers individual patients with secure control of all of their health data and with tools to make that data useful. What we do is inspired by the experience of our founder, Stephen Aldrich, who was diagnosed himself with stage 4 cancer over 3 years ago and given a survival prognosis of 4 to 5 months. And Steve wasn't satisfied with that option, and nor was he satisfied with the purely palliative treatment that was prescribed by a major cancer center. So as a trained biologist, Steve knew that if there were a solution to his illness, it would be found somewhere in his fundamental, especially his genomic health data. So on his own, he obtained comprehensive genomic sequencing of his healthy genome and his tumor. He put together an advisory team, engaged an independent oncologist, used his data to enter 2 clinical trials and to gain access to 2 new immunotherapy drugs. And then finally used his data to have designed and manufactured and administered a fully personalized cancer vaccine. This is all very cutting edge novel therapies. And Steve founded the company, he founded MyCancerDB as a vehicle for many other cancer patients to accomplish for themselves what he did, only to do it better, faster, and cheaper. So what we have is a portal through which our clients can access our innovative technology and our software, through which we combine the power of genomic sequencing, bioinformatics, and artificial intelligence to help them obtain and store their fundamental health data in a secure vault in the cloud, and then leverage it so they can know more and do more about their cancer. We give them immediate and full control over their data, access to a network of supporting analytic tools, diagnostic services, third-party providers, and the ability also to easily collaborate remotely with their care team and with any other physicians or specialists of their choosing. In short, we give them agency to influence and even manage the course of their care. So one key application of our technology lies in its ability to support truly personalized N-of-1 therapies, which can now be designed for an individual patient based on their unique genomic profile. We assist our individual customers in designing those and in accessing these therapies, including the exact vaccine that Steve received. But also, we can improve the speed, efficiency, and economics for healthcare institutions who perform research on these personalized solutions or who provide them to their own patients.
That's incredible. And I mean, it's been quite a journey, and I can attest to it. I've known you for many months now, Bruce, through Newchip and the Accelerator, and you know, lots to talk about in today's discussion regarding MyCancerDB.
Sure.
Thank you for sharing that quick insight on the companies, what you're building, because you know the core of this conversation is about why you are entrepreneurs. I'd love to kick off the discussion by hearing you share some insight into your story as an entrepreneur, specifically the story behind why you chose to become an entrepreneur. And I do want to emphasize the entrepreneur part. Ostensibly, you could have done part of what you're doing now under the auspices of a corporation. You could have, maybe built it elsewhere and taken less risk, but you chose to do that essentially on your own with your co-founders. I'd love to hear where you were before and why you are here today as an entrepreneur. So Julie, let's go with you.
Sure. Well, I think in all honesty, my co-founders have a lot to do with it. I love the two of them. They were definitely two of my favorite people to work with. And they actually started the seed got planted for Swift when the two of them were having a Christmas breakfast that they annually did as a catch up. And they were both involved in consulting within the retail industry in different capacities. and were realizing that their clients were expressing the same problems. And it was kind of one of those like, wow, we had this, we did this, we solved it. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could help other retailers do the same thing? And I got, and as is true fashion for today's world, I got the instant message from, on Facebook, hey, what are you up to? We're thinking about doing this. And the ability to work with two people that I genuinely love working with, and to be able to bring a solution that can help a tremendous amount of people and really have a solid impact on the industry, that is something that is very close to me, because it's what I've done for my career, is essentially build businesses. And I've been fortunate that in the time that I was at Urban Outfitters, I always said I kind of had three lives, because I started when the Anthropology.com business was young, and I was an employee of one, built a team, built the business with Michael and Ranjana. And then I started off in the corporate finance group, and started did that in the corporate team, moved over with them. And then I got to go to Free People. And I've always loved that, coming in with something that you see tremendous opportunity, and it's like, it's there, and you get to go in and really get your hands dirty and figure out how to transform that opportunity into something that is really successful. And that is really, how I ended up in the whole entrepreneur journey.
That's incredible. And I think oftentimes when you have the support of people that you've known for many years and operationally in different companies, it makes that leap a little bit bigger or easier, right? Like, it's easier to say, yeah, let's do this. We have this combined experience. We know what we want to do. We get the industry, so let's just do it. What was the biggest trepidation that you had when you said, you know what, let's do this on our own. Let's become entrepreneurs? What was the biggest fear?
I think that it's a little bit of kind of what you said, like, the unicorn does not happen overnight. And in a lot of times, everybody hopes for that, but you hope for the best and you plan for the worst, right? And I think that it is that, what's the amount of time? Because as you said, it seems glamorous, but when you start off and you are spending, a tremendous amount of time, that is probably the most amount of time that you've ever spent professionally. Even, all three of us are admitted workaholics, and it's like, okay, now you're doing it and there is no paycheck. So, that ability of how long do you move down that path where you're throwing your life into it and you're enjoying that, but it's like, oh, wait, there's, whereas at some point, the reality of the needs for some sort of funds happens. And, I think that's just the trepidation of like, what is your timeline?
Yeah. Hey, Julie, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
I know you've been in retail for quite a long time. I'm a little curious, along the way, had you seen previously an interesting opportunity to perhaps go out with a new idea on your own and said, nope, this is not the right time or not the right thing? Did that come up before at all?
I did get presented with a variety of opportunities, and I think that it's exactly what you said. It wasn't the right time, because for me, I was actually living the entrepreneurial growth, as it was. Like, when I went into, when I first started at Urban, and I literally answered an ad in the help wanted section of the Sunday newspaper, and it said, come in and be the staff accountant, which my friends thought I was crazy. I was coming out of public accounting. They're like, you're going to be a staff accountant? Come in and be the staff accountant for this new business that we're launching, and ultimately grow it into being the business manager. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. It sounds like I get to own it. And I liked owning it. And I walked in and, my boss handed me a one-page list that was, double spaced and still had a lot of room on it of the number of people that were part of that team. And, I just thoroughly enjoyed seeing that list grow and grow and grow and grow, and, ultimate and just the whole expansion of what happened. So, I think it's just, I like the build. and I get excited about the build. So, it seems like, ironically enough, it seems like in each of my instances, it's been like a 5-year curve before, it's all the work. And then it's like, you get to that like 5th year and it's like, oh, things are kind of a little bit settled, which we're not there yet with Swift. We're not at year 5. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to Bruce's point, it's interesting because the timing, you never really quite know until you look back and say, wow, if I had done that back then, it probably would have not worked, but you wait for that right opportunity. And I also like how you mentioned, Julie, that sort of like moment of introspection where you're like, wait a second, I want to do this for myself, right? I don't want to do this for the big man. So I think that's a very core characteristic of an entrepreneur in the making. Marcus, you have a very particular story about how you chose the path of entrepreneurship. I'd love for you to share that with our audience.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started my first business when I was a junior at U.S.C. I was a junior in college. So, early on, my dad was a businessman, and early on, I kind of distinguished that I'd rather work for myself than for another company or something else. But at the same time, just like Julie said, I realized very quickly I'm a workaholic, and I started a first business, sold it, started a second one, and by the third one, I was pretty much non-existent in my personal life, family life. I was really just working too much and focused on too much on growing these businesses. So at some point, I realized, and it was, brought to my attention that it's not healthy, and I decided to completely pull the plug on this whole ambition and going after business and stuff, and pretty much just put a halt on it. And again, I don't know what I was thinking at that time, or sometimes you learn things about yourself after the fact, not at the moment that you're making these decisions. But I decided I'm gonna go and join a monastery and become a monk. And again, there was obviously there was a lot of pressure, and my thoughts were definitely in a pendulum swing. But for whatever reason, I thought that's an interesting challenge. It's not business, and it's obviously a very good way to perceive life and maybe even get enlightened and stuff. I didn't last more than 6 months. I mean, and I didn't become a monk, but I definitely was exposed to a entirely different way of living, or a different lifestyle that I was not aware of at all. And I got introduced to my ego and this whole concept, especially for entrepreneurs. I was one of those typical entrepreneurs that, my thoughts and my ideas are just supreme. They're unchallengeable or whatever. But you, in return, you learn a lot of humility and kind of self-reflection when you're in that kind of environment where, everything is minimal and everything you have is there's nothing material for you to kind of hang on to, or you just entirely have to keep looking inside, and a lot of times that's not pretty to look at. And but at the same time, when I left, I still did some consulting here and there, but I moved into a desert area of California when I came back to the US, and where my mom was retired, and I decided to live a very simple, easy life, do some art, do some, live a small town life, really. And I was, because I was very happy, and I was content. And that was one of the first times in my life that ambition wasn't really taking over. And then this situation happened with my mom, and this kind of gap of situation of like, if why hasn't, I literally was like, why hasn't anybody come up with an answer? Because at first I was looking for this product in my head, like I'm sure there is a QR based medical ID or something, and I was just surprised that it wasn't. And that ambition, or that instinctive entrepreneur nature, that okay, let's look into this a little bit more. And I remember I kept telling myself, don't make any promises, don't jump the gun. but at some point, and at that point, I was the director of the Chamber of Commerce for a town of, 3,500 people. So everything was really beautiful, simple, and easy. But I realized at some point, like, listen, you obviously you want to do this, and you need to make a decision. And if you do, then this is a full-time gig, and your finances are going to be unpredictable again, and you have to go back into big city and acclimate yourself. And I was behind in a lot of technology. That was another thing that I had gladly neglected, staying up to date with all the recent technologies that web and app and phone-based systems had upgraded to, and realized I need to, this will be a huge learning curve, and if I was willing to do it. And at some juncture, I realized, like, and this is maybe the part where you go to a monastery and learn something, and that is no expectations. You learn not to expect things just because you expect them. And that was the first thing I realized, like, listen, you might do this and nobody might want any medical IDs or QR, whatever you're doing. And you might, have, 5 years down the line, completely upheaval this easy, basic lifestyle you have and end up with nothing to show for it. Are you okay with that? And my answer to myself was yes. And I consulted a couple of other people, because that's another thing I've learned by now, is to not just trust on my own, instinct or my own decisions. And I spoke to a few people, and they were wise enough to kind of tell me the same thing. Like, it's a risk, but you should be okay with, failure or not succeeding the way you think you should about, doing this. And when I was okay with that, I decided to move forward. And it has been a challenge. And every time I feel like, oh my God, this is too much or whatever, I go, hey, man, you made this, you had to talk with yourself. Like, you're going to do this, and, you're going to do it as best as you can. And a lot of things are not under your control, and just do your best and see what happens. But make sure, this is a no regrets kind of road you're taking. So stop complaining.
Yeah, no, and you can't have any regrets. You have to enjoy that journey, which, as evidenced by our experiences here, they take time. I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I think it's a very unique perspective that you have. Being an entrepreneur from a young age, being raised in a family of entrepreneurs, and then sort of meeting yourself halfway, and realizing, what am I even doing, right? And then taking that new perspective on who you are, how you think, and how you live, and bringing that to applying it really to a problem that you're now trying to solve, which I think is absolutely fascinating. Bruce, tell us, a little bit more about your journey, because I know you have a very impressive and prestigious background outside of entrepreneurship. What brought you to entrepreneurship today?
Well, I'm a little bit atypical, as you started to point out, in that I came to this particular role after a 30-plus career on Wall Street. And I guess if I wanted to be flip, I could say I'm an accidental entrepreneur. But in reality, I was drawn in at a time of transition for me. I was drawn in by an invitation from an old friend and by an exciting idea that he had. And, when I say an old friend, I mean an old friend. This Stephen was, we were best friends in grade school. And then we're separated for about 50 years until we got back in touch. And that resulted in, I guess he thought I was a smart guy in 4th grade, so I qualified for working with him on this new project. But, he had, as I've alluded to a little bit, he had a great idea about how to improve cancer care, and also, improve the system which could use it. So that was exciting, and also I've always liked learning. I always had that in my corner, and I certainly found a lot of steep learning curves in this particular role. I'm talking about having to learn about genomics and biology and cancer treatment and software and healthcare regulation. So I was yanked in a lot of different directions, and had to up my game in a number of respects. And so besides working with a good group it's also been, an exciting and stimulating learning experience.
Incredible. And I think it's one of those things where, you have a very established career, in your case, for 3 decades, and, you do a lot of amazing things, a lot of work, and then out of nowhere, this big new opportunity to do something new and embark on this new journey comes up. What were your hesitations, especially after having that career behind you, to jump back into the grind as an entrepreneur?
Well, I was brought in, just as I mentioned, because I was an old friend of Steven's, but he also saw in my background some useful elements. I had business school and being a manager on a lot of financial groups. And, my role was to be kind of the business guy, more or less. He was the science guy. And then we have a technology kind of co-founder so we operated in these 3 distinct circles, but overlapped quite a bit. So, I had a lot of different roles, but in a lot of things I wasn't really terribly familiar with. So that was the trepidation, that I didn't bring any particular expertise to the table. I was, as Stephen said many times, I was meant to be the adult in the room, and I did qualify in that regard.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And I think it gives you a very unique perspective on business in general, after especially having been in Wall Street and then jumping into creating companies from the ground up, so that investors one day on the buy side can say, oh, this looks like a good investment, a good deal for long-term growth. I wanted to turn the conversation a little bit more to some of the comments that all 3 of you alluded to, the challenges, right? And I also mentioned it in the beginning, right? Entrepreneurship is highly glamorized, but there's so many challenges and setbacks and risks that come with building something effectively out of nothing. I'd love to learn about some of the challenges that you have faced in your entrepreneurial journey with this startup. Julie, let's go with you first.
Sure. I think that selling has been a big challenge and a big learning curve. I think that it's truly the fact that I have so much more of an appreciation for anybody who does sales as a full-time job than I ever did before. And I think that realizing that as an entrepreneur, you are selling in so many different ways, because you're selling yourself, you're selling your business to clients, and you're selling yourself to clients, and you're selling both of those to investors. And, it's getting comfortable with doing that and being able to modify the way you sell, depending on the audience. So, and you have to go from being a novice to an expert. And I think that is tremendously challenging. I think it's even more challenging in the, when you're used to, as everybody that we're all speaking of had established careers, and you've gotten to a point where you know what you're doing in your career, you're established, things are rolling. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we'll go up against somebody else who is the best of the best in their career. And, it's a David and Goliath approach, and like figuring out how to quickly get yourself to the point that you can, be in the same place is definitely a quick but steep learning curve.
Yeah. And selling in that regard isn't, just selling the product, right, to your customers. It's also selling the vision, right? Especially to investors.
Absolutely.
And also selling the vision to other teammates, right? You want them to take a risk for this journey with you, especially at an early stage startup. So I think it's one of those soft skills that a lot of us sort of, especially when you're in industry and you're not doing sales or any sort of selling, we don't think about it as much. But when you're an entrepreneur and you have to look at the fundamentals of a business to create profit, you have to sell and you have to learn how to do it. So it's a big challenge, but I think it's one that will pay off handsomely in the future.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, because I think obviously all of us have, bought into what we're doing. We believe in it. There's a reason, we've all lived it in some way, and figuring out how to make somebody else feel that same confidence in what we have can do for them is definitely, something that is a perpetual challenge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Marcus, what challenges have you faced? And I'm sure you faced several.
Yeah, well, exactly what Julie said. I mean, sales and marketing people, I mean, I always had a distant kind of interaction with that. And I don't know what that, how they do it, but I'm glad I don't and stuff. And then now I have to fully do that and gain a lot of respect about how it's done. And that's been a huge challenge. And some of that challenge has just been later, I realized it was just about my own self-confidence. I really believe this and I really believe the product, but do people believe in me, or in those kind of issues that, anyone has to kind of address. But it was, it was a good learning curve that I got to understand how sales is approached, how marketing is approached, and how to allow myself to learn. The other aspects are there was so much I realized I don't know, and there's so much I thought I know, but very quickly I realized my knowledge was surface-based, especially in the startup environment where, I said, well, I started one or two business, it's just starting a business. Well, it's just not in the startup environment. It's just not starting a business. Starting a business, there's an old history about what that product is. You're improving something, or you're just, kind of picking up where other people left off in that industry. And in the startup environment, you're creating a whole environment where your product is probably the first, or you're the first that are trying to do something, and other people may not see it that way. Other people may not see what you're seeing, and rightfully so. And for me, it's been trying to make sure that I understand what the audience, the investor, the people who need the product, the people who are going to work with me, they understand what I'm seeing, and and I try to make it as least delusional. At least, I try to not say, well, don't you see, like, it's the most amazing thing. Like, no, like, tell me, what is it that I'm not expressing correctly to you, or how am I not conveying what I see here? And if you see improvement in the way I should be addressing this or the product, I'm open to that, because ultimately I want this product to succeed. As much as I want my ego to succeed and feel like, oh, I was the guy. Ultimately, I want the product to succeed regardless of my personal recognition or people knowing if it was me or not. And and that's been a challenge just in life for me, in the sense that realizing the significance of, if I have a good idea, how important the idea is versus how important I think I am. And I guess that's a challenge in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of other challenges, but I wouldn't be able to tell you all of them, right now.
Yeah, no. And I think what's very interesting, and you bring up, and I see this a lot, by the way, working with hundreds of entrepreneurs through Newchip and the industry, there is that sort of, I don't want to call it just insecurity, but you see a lot of the imposter syndrome, right? With entrepreneurs who have so much potential, who are onto something that's really good, and they need help, right? We're here to help them, but that sort of imposter syndrome can really damage the potential that you have. And I love to tell, and I love hearing this from other people in the industry and investors even, you have to believe that you deserve a seat at that table. You have to believe that you have what it takes to build what you're building. As Julie said, obviously, like, it's kind of crazy, and some would say insane, for us to think that we have what it takes to get that, slaying in that rock and throw it at Goliath, right? But that's what makes entrepreneurs. That's what drives innovation. That's sort of like belief in yourself, that I can do that, and that it's going to be challenging, that it won't be easy, but the hope that you can get there, I think, is a very key catalyst for being an entrepreneur who can succeed long into the future. Bruce, what about some of the challenges that you faced? And I know 2020 has been a very challenging year in many respects.
Yeah, okay. Well, again, like Marcus, I could talk on and on about those. I mean, briefly, as a technology company, as I mentioned, one of the key things is building and having the technology itself. And we were very fortunate to have, as one of our essentially co-founders, a brilliant CTO, Andrew Pop, who has been actively designing and building our platform for us. And so, that's been occupying him dramatically, but it's been a huge boost ultimately to our ability to get interest in the company. But that brings up a couple of points that both Julie and Marcus mentioned. That is, we have a new idea, it's kind of complex, and we're constantly trying to explain what it is that we did and what it's supposed to do, and it's not simple. And so we found ourselves often having issues with, are we explaining this? Are we selling this? How are we supposed to message this? That's been a constant challenge for us. And again, with regard to what Marcus said, we're a little bit out on the frontier with what we're trying to do. There's not a lot of reference points out there, and there's an awful lot of resistance coming from a lot of different quarters. So that's a challenge to deal with all the time, both in getting yourself both listened to and accepted, and it gets any kind of traction. And I know also that you're interested in my discussing the fact that during the course of this challenging year, My Cancer DB actually lost its founder, Stephen. Stephen actually passed away this summer unexpectedly, I have to say. He had been quite healthy for 3.5 years, but he actually succumbed to what we refer to as the standard of care. The standard of care is what we're trying to help supplement with personalized therapies. But the standard of care is a little bit old school. It's a very limiting selection of cancer treatments. And in his case, he had to submit to some radiation treatments that were overdosed. So he was in many ways a second time kind of a martyr to the cause of what we were trying to exemplify in our advance towards personalized therapy and safer therapies. And so that challenge, trying to replace a founder with a vision and great selling skills and someone who personifies what it is you're doing was very difficult. And I have to say that the fact that we had successfully built a very useful technology and had a plan and had a vision to carry on with Stephen was very helpful.
Yeah, no, and it's one of those stories that I think about, right? Yours specifically with My Cancer DB. When you're launching a startup, you're usually not expecting those kind of things to happen, right? You're expecting other kinds of challenges, but sometimes the unexpected will happen. And I think that's where, at those critical points in the journey where the team, the vision, the company is truly tested. And I'm honored and privileged to know you, because you and the team at My Cancer DB were able to step in, right, and uphold the vision that the founder had for My Cancer DB. I know we're close to time, so I wanted to tie this to the last question that I had regarding, what is the goal? What is the impact that you seek to make as an entrepreneur? And I think, obviously, there are some of the more superficial, goals. We want financial freedom. We want to change the world. But how exactly? What exactly does that mean to you? And I guess ultimately, I want to know what's in it for you. Why do you want to make an impact as an entrepreneur, Julie?
So I think for me, I would love to be able to impact growth and opportunity for people and businesses, because one of the things that I've always enjoyed the most is seeing that opportunity get created. Like the jobs get created, the people come in, they start learning new skills, seeing the light bulbs go off as they feel good about the success that they're able to achieve and grow. And I think that as, we can we have a solution that allows for people to do their jobs better and then feel better about their contributions, and they're seeing the businesses grow. And I think that kind of satisfaction is just infectious, and it's a wonderful thing. So that's what, I'm hoping that we can really transform foundationally how e-commerce businesses handle their workflow and allow them to really optimize what their results can be.
I think in another conversation I mentioned to you this also. I mean, my thing is a little bit more selfish. At some point, I just want etagz to save a lot of lives, and growth and profit and return to investors is very important, obviously, and I've learned that by now. And at the same time, I just want to, be able to hopefully make this the first product in that sense that it's, it's a simple solution and it saves lives. And that's, when I leave this world, someone says, oh, this is the guy who saved a bunch of lives with this little simple product, that would be, a really good personal satisfaction for me.
No, I think that's a legacy, right? Like actually leaving that impact. And I care about legacy a lot too, right? A lot of the things that I do, yes, we all know there's that sort of immediate reward that you want for it, but at the end of the day, like, how are you leaving this world once you're far gone, right?
Exactly.
Are you better? And like, how do you play into that? And yeah, there can be that sort of like, well, I want people to remember me, right? But sometimes they will remember you because you changed their lives forever, right? You changed something structurally, fundamentally, that made their life better, happier, more livable in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's, in and of its own right, very admirable.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Absolutely. Bruce.
Yeah, well, I will again credit my former partner, Stephen, with a great deal of inspiration. But in working on this, I came quickly to the conclusion that healthcare could use a little disruption. I actually have that quote on our website. And many industries do, but I think healthcare maybe more than some. And so there are an awful lot of specifics I could go into and how we're trying to improve the opportunities in cancer care. But and one thing it does come down to just saving a lot of lives. There's 600,000 lost every year to cancer. And there's a lot of technology to be applied to help those people. But in a larger sense, what was very interesting about our concept at Stevens is that I read a book early on entitled The Patient Will See You Now. And this is a book by Dr. Eric Topol about the future of medicine. And he's basically saying the patient needs to be brought more into a position of centrality in the healthcare system. And what we're doing essentially is putting the power and the information in the hands of the patient so that they can better treat themselves and take care of themselves. And so it's much broader vision than just cancer.
I love that. And I think having that broad vision, having that broad story is so important to making a big dent, a big impact, especially in the field that you're in. Quickly before we go, I love it if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who is aspiring to be an entrepreneur, or who may be already an entrepreneur but is facing those initial challenges. What would that piece of advice be? Julie.
I think that it would be to fully embrace the journey and really enjoy the highs because they're wonderful, and learn from the lows because that is all that you can do. And there is definitely a good lesson in every setback, and just to embrace the full journey and believe in the end result, and you will get there.
Thank you. Marcus.
My best advice would be to be very flexible, keep it simple, and be very open to learning a lot more than you want to realize, or I wanted.
I love that. Absolutely. It's a learning journey. It's a journey, absolutely, as Julie established, and you're going to learn a lot, so you have to be flexible for it.
Yeah, and what Julie said as well, the ups and downs, and yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Bruce.
I think what is reflected in my own experience is that, try to have an inspiration both with an idea and with someone you may want to work with, because you're not necessarily going to get any economic benefit anytime soon. So you better enjoy it while you're getting there.
Yeah, and I love that. I think it's, you were fortunate enough to work with someone that has been such a big part of your life many, many years. And I think not every founder at a startup has that opportunity and gift. So, I commend you for that. And I hope that this will be of inspiration to many entrepreneurs or soon to be entrepreneurs worldwide. So that is it. We are at time. Thank you so much, Julie, Marcus, Bruce, for giving us your time to be a part of this panel here at Demo Week with Newchip. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Armando.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you. Thank you, guys.